If you're an entrepreneur and you've hit a revenue ceiling within your business, the reason why is because you do not understand the biblical business model that's in the very first book of the Bible that nobody teaches about. It's in Genesis chapter 1. My best piece of information to give you the most amount of value as possible is to read the first book of the Bible by yourself, because that is how you unlock your own understanding. Here I'm just sharing my own understanding, but you'll get much more value if you come to get the understanding on your own. Okay, so let's break it down. Genesis chapter 1, verse 26 to 28 is when God is creating man. This is how it goes. Verse 26 says, "Then God said, let us make man in our image, according to our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." Verse 27 says, "So God created man in his own image." Notice in verse 26 it says, "Let them," not "let man," because when he says man, it's male and female, Adam and Eve. So verse 27 says, "So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him, male and female, he created them." Verse 28 then says, pay attention, because this is where the framework is. It says, "Then God blessed them, and God said to them," the first thing that God said to man, "Be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it, have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the earth, or over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves on the earth." Just think about that, okay? The first thing that God ever says to man, who he created in his own image, he probably has good instructions. He says, "Be fruitful, multiply, and have dominion." Okay, let's break it down. Be fruitful. It's not be multiply, it's do multiply, because multiplying is an action. So you need to be fruitful, do multiply, and then have dominion. So you see the framework in the Bible in the very first book: be, do, then have. Okay, so if you're experiencing limiting results, it's because you're doing it from a limited state of being. Because most likely, if you're experiencing a revenue ceiling within your business, it's because you have maxed out who you currently are. So if you need to get more and have more, you need to be more. Do you understand? Because if you be a little, then you'll do a little. And if you do a little, then you'll have a little. If you be a lot, then you'll do a lot. And if you do a lot, then you'll have a lot. This principle can be applied to every area of your life, including your business. And most people, here's the thing, most people want to stay the same and have more. It doesn't make sense. It's almost like a funnel. And here's the most interesting thing, right? Psalms chapter 1, David is writing the book of Psalms. It says this, very interesting analogy that he makes. He's in verse 1 to 3, it says, "Blessed is the one who does not walk in step with the wicked, or stand in the way that sinners take, or sit in the company of mockers, but whose delight is in the Lord, and who meditates on his law day and night. That person is like a tree planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in its season. And whose leaf does not wither. Whatever they do prospers." Out of all the things that David could have compared man to, he compared man to a tree. The one who does not walk with the sinners is like a tree planted by streams of water, okay? And then you think back to the analogy in Genesis chapter 1, the be, do, have framework. As I mentioned in the beginning, actually, let's break it down. Let's look at the anatomy of a tree, right? Just so you understand this example. Let's say God planted a seed within you, which he did. There's a saying that I heard that I really like. It's, every man can count the amount of seeds in an apple, but only God knows the amount of apples in a seed. You know, so when God says be fruitful and multiply, it's just like a tree. When he plants a seed, you will multiply. An apple seed will produce multiple apples, which will produce multiple seeds, which will produce multiple trees. And that's multiplication. That's what he means by be fruitful and multiply, like a tree. That's why the comparison is very important. So if you look at this diagram, let's say this is the seed. The hardest part, right? You have to understand this. The hardest part about this is the being. Let's say this: be, do, have. Okay. The hardest part is being. If your being is blocked, you can't do more. You know, like if you're being a little, then you're gonna do a little, and then you're gonna have a little. If you're gonna be a lot, then you're gonna do a lot and have a lot. You see, it's directly correlated. So let's look at the tree. The hardest thing in the journey of a tree, it's not when it sprouts, because when it sprouts, it has nothing but air, it has infinite room to grow up. You know, the hardest thing for a tree to do is form the roots, because there's so many rocks and so many things underground that it has to push against in order to be firm, in order to then sprout. Because if the roots don't form, then the tree can be knocked over very easily. And apply this to your own life. If you don't be the right person, and you want to get the things can be taken from you easily because you are not that guy, pal. You're not that guy, pal. Okay? You're not that guy, buddy. Okay? So you got to spend the most time here focusing on being. And that is very important, like delayed gratification. Most people want instantaneous results, but being isn't instantaneous. Being takes time. You need to become. It's the process of becoming. That's why it takes the most time. That's why you don't see when a tree is planted that the roots are being formed, but it's being formed. And then once the tree sprouts, I don't know what plant, maybe it's like a sugar cane or whatever. Let's say that this is the doing. That's the trunk of the tree. And then this is like the leaves. Let's say it's a money tree and these like are just dollar signs. You know what I'm saying? This is the having. So you want to have these things, but first you got to be. And being takes the longest time. But once you be and once you are, then you'll be able to have. So be, once you be, then you'll be able to do, and then you'll be able to be fruitful and now multiply. Okay? And when we say fruitful, you might think, what does that mean? Obviously, God planted a seed within all of us. If you look at the book of Galatians, chapter 5, it talks about the works of the flesh and the fruits of the Spirit. And again, look into this on your own. Here, I'm just sharing my own understanding, but in order for me to provide the most value, the best thing I could do is read the Bible for yourself, okay? So in Galatians chapter 5, when it talks about the works of the flesh and the fruits of the Spirit, they're directly in contrast with one another. So if God tells you to be fruitful, then you have to understand what the fruits of the Spirit are. So you could be that, and you have to understand what the works of the flesh are, because the fruits of the Spirit are directly in contrast with the works of the flesh. So you have to understand what the works of the flesh are and what the fruits of the Spirit are. The works of the flesh are evident. These are things like selfish ambition, dissensions, factions, fits of rage, jealousy. I don't know it off top, but again, that's why you need to read, because I've read it. You see, I know I could recall these things, but if you really want to understand these principles and these concepts in order to break through that revenue ceiling and be the person who you need to be to have the things that you want to have, you have to read the text for yourself. So those are the works of the flesh. And then the fruits of the Spirit are things like love, self-control, joy, gentleness, kindness. You know, and against these things, there are no law. There's no limit to how much self-control one can have, to how much love one can show, to how kind someone can be. So once you are fruitful, then you will be able to do more because you are now more, and then you'll be able to now have more. If you like this video, I have a community that's completely for free. Link is in the description. It's for Christian business owners who want to connect with other founders who are building on biblical principles. It's completely free. You heard me right. No credit card needed. If you join, you can leave within 5 minutes. That's pretty much it for the video. Make sure that you follow me on Instagram. It's the same as the YouTube, Ohimai, Osazet Ohimai. And yeah, join the free community. If you want to apply to my private network, it's high ticket, just to let you know. DM me the word Genesis, and then we'll have a conversation about what that looks like. I appreciate your time for watching this video, and I'll see you next week. Peace out.